Hello everyone, welcome back to Gru's Secret Evil Underground Bunker. Today we're not going to be stealing the moon, but we are going to be stealing some TikTok trends.
I count money, I count money, I count money. I swear in a hungry, that's what I did.
Yesterday I got all dressed up and I went and saw the new Minions movie, The Rise of Gru, and yeah, the Minions movie is part of the Despicable Me franchise, but isn't part of the Despicable Me trilogy. It's its own category under Minions. It's the sequel to the original Minions, which only was about Minions. It had no Gru in it. So being able to see how the Minions and Gru came together and grew and eventually became a team is pretty cool. I don't think it offers this grand discovery that really explored the intricacies between the Minions and Gru working together. But it does just give some backstory. It's like, where did these yellow minions come from? It follows our three main minions, Kevin, Stuart, and Bob, legends, but also introduces a new minion, Otto, who's like very talkative. Before I go any further, this is a complete review, so there are going to be spoilers. So yeah, watch it first. The biggest component by far to this movie is humor. I mean, sitting down in the theater, immediately within the first couple minutes, you're thrown into humor. The thing is so fast, action-packed. It's got some scenes of like Gru as a kid and the minions going around and doing these evil, despicable, really funny stuff, and it is so funny. I don't think the humor is as witty as it is in maybe the Despicable Me movies, but as far as appealing to what children think are funny, the slapstick humor is so great. It's so good. So good. We're introduced very quickly to the villains of this movie, the Vicious Six. They seem wild and kind of random, similar to the weird bubblegum villain from Despicable Me 3. It's nothing like Vector, who offers an emotional attachment to our main character. They don't really encapsulate a persona. They're kind of just these wild, random villains, but it's not as goofy as the bubblegum guy, and they seem a little bit grounded in reality. And of course, their old guy they kicked out, Wild Knuckles, does have some connection to Gru, so the story kind of makes sense. It's not just this random villain. Wild Knuckles and Gru learn that sometimes villains need friends. They need teamwork to do their villainy stuff, which is a sweet sentiment, I suppose. The Minions, on the other hand, follow their own kind of silly adventures that are disconnected from Gru, which makes sense because this is a Minions movie, it's not a Despicable Me movie, but they seem so very far disconnected. Otto is just kind of handed back this ancient stone, which is what drove the story in the first place, and it didn't really feel like he'd have put in any work. And then our main three, Kevin, Bob, and Stuart, are learning Kung Fu the entirety of the movie for some reason. And again, I hate to be like some critic that's like, there should be a deeper meaning here. Like, I get it, it's a Minions movie, it's not supposed to be that elaborate, but come on, I felt like they could do a little more than that. The gang reunites for a somewhat lackluster final battle. I will allude back to the original Despicable Me movies where Gru is fighting a guy who he's hated his whole life. They have this, hatred for each other. They're both trying to be the better villain, and Gru kind of realizes, wait, I don't want to be the better villain. I want to save my kids. They're like in the sky and the stakes are really high and he has to catch the girls and like the girls are all taken away and he has to give up basically his entire villain life to live a good life, a life he was slowly growing into the first part of the movie. In Minions, The Rise of Gru, the stakes were never there. I mean, Gru is tied up to a clock, but there was never any wondering like, oh, is Gru really going to be saved? It's like, yeah, obviously is going to be saved. The danger was never super persistent or on a high scale this entire movie. In fact, I think the stakes were actually very underwhelming. And the final battle was also random. I mean, our Vicious Six, which of course are just 5 characters now, transform into these Chinese zodiacs when the clock hits 12. And then the Minions, of course, transform into like the weaker animals because that's funny. And then there's no moment of like, oh my gosh, the hero wins. It's just like the minions yell and find their inner beast, and oh, the villains are defeated and Gru is saved. Of course, the fight was mostly action-packed, and it did have some silly goofs, and the animation was great, as you'd expect from a Minions movie. The Despicable Me franchise always has a way of making, like, action things, kind of goofy, but like fun to watch in the same way. So it wasn't lackluster there, but there was none of that sentimental like feeling that you'd have in the original Despicable Me movies, and also the stakes just weren't that high. And also the villains turning into Zodiacs and the villains in general were so random and they weren't really explored at all the way maybe the villains in the Despicable Me franchise, or especially Vector, was explored. You know his backstory, their motive. With these villains, it's just like, oh, they want the stone back. It's, kind of surface level, not really grand. I do appreciate all the nods to the original Despicable Me movies. I mean, there's a moment where Wild Knuckles is telling Gru to shoot for the moon, kid, which of course is a phrase, shoot for the moon, but he goes and actually steals the moon in the original series. And then, of course, we get to meet a younger, more handsome Dr. Nefario and see how he and Gru teamed up and became, like, supervillain and evil scientist, which is super cool. It was also pointed out to me that the Vicious Six and their they're morphing into Chinese zodiacs, and the minions learning Kung Fu is very similar to the Furious Five, the five animals from Kung Fu Panda, who of course know Kung Fu, and that just seemed to have like a huge similarity there. The movie was fun, and the movie was super fast-paced. I mean, there wasn't really any room for boring moments, except maybe later on when the minions are going on their own adventure, it can get a teensy bit stale, but for the majority of it, it's very action-packed, very humor-packed, and I can see why a kid would love this movie start to finish. But with that being a plus side, I also think it's a downside. I will allude again to the first two Despicable Me movies where, of course, they're humorous and animated and silly and goofy, and of course they're made for kids, but they're also heartwarming and charming. And there's also a deeper level that you can connect to and dive into and explore. It's not only made for kids, but it's something that an older audience can enjoy as well. And that's why I think the Minions series and this movie in particular is lacking. Maybe it's great for kids, maybe it's like a Life of Pets movie, but it's no Frozen, it's no Kung Fu Panda. As far as rewatchability goes, for an older audience, I don't see anyone my age or older ever going back to Minions: The Rise of Gru. I see some younger kids wanting to watch it over and over again, but the love I have for movies like Zootopia or Kung Fu Panda, the animated movies that are made for kids that I want to go back to, this is a movie made for kids that I really want to go back to. Everything that it offers, I feel like I got out of the first watch. It wasn't made to be explored any deeper than what it offers on the surface level, which is a little bit of a shame because the first two Despicable Me movies do that so well. Minions: The Rise of Gru played to its strengths, but it didn't offer anything too charming. On a scale of 0 to 5, I give the characters a 2. The ability it was to play to its genre, a action comedy, a 5. The world building, a 4. Soundtrack, 5. Animation, 5. Plot, 3. Investment, 3. Point or message of the movie, 4. Creativity, 3, and the stakes, a 2. Overall, I'm feeling a 67%. Respectable, charming, humorous, action-packed, fast-paced, never boring, but lacking. There's my review of Minions: The Rise of Gru. Let me know what you all think. Let me know if you agree or disagree. I know I talked about doing a lot of videos in my last YouTube video and then doing none of those videos. Maybe I'll get to it. I don't know. I felt like doing Rise of Gru as a review. We'll see. And yeah, see you all next time. Peace out.